Hi, welcome to Game Changers. My name is Dutch Thompson. My company is MP3. That stands for Move Past Pain to Performance. And I am what's considered a neuroathletic trainer. I basically come to people and help them improve brain function for body function. So if an athlete comes to me and they have a sore pitching arm and they can't throw, most people are going to look at the shoulder anatomy and biomechanics of that shoulder and address it. I'm going to come into that shoulder with the question of how does the brain work? How does the brain see it? So for me to get an opportunity to interview someone like we have today, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, is an enormous privilege and honor. Having her experience is going to be so much fun for our program. A brief introduction. This is the person who has had, I think, more TED Talk viewings than anybody else. I think that still might be the stat. Over 20 million viewings at this point. At any rate, Dr. Taylor is a Harvard-trained published neuroanatomist who experienced a severe hemorrhage in the left hemisphere of her brain in 1996. So here we have someone who, with a lot of brain training, uh, experienced one of the worst things a brain can experience. And yet here she is with us today, having recovered over 8 years. And what I'd like you to do is, if you want to hear more of her story in terms of that recovery and in terms of how she experienced the morning of her hemorrhage, it's very fascinating, and that you should read her book or watch her TED Talk to get more information about that. And with that, I'll invite her into the screen. And here with us today is Dr. Taylor. Hello, Dr. Taylor. Welcome to Game Changers. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's this is like the best subject ever.
It is, right? It's about the brain.
It's
Um,
about the brain and about health. How does one use one's mind and one's brain in order to create an overall health? It's fantastic. So thank you.
yes, and on that note, what you've done a number of times in your TED Talks is you've come out with a literal brain. And I just think that is so cool because so many of us are afraid of the brain, I think. We hear the word brain and we don't think of it as an organ that we can kind of understand. We think of it as this mystical, spiritual thing that is beyond our reach. So I love that you're holding it right there in your hand. It communicates with such power. This is just a
Yeah.
structure. It's just a part of the body. It's amazing, but this is it.
Right. Yes. It's interesting because a lot of people think that the brain is just like this soup and everything's just flopping around and slopping around in there. But no, it has anatomy, it has structure, and it is organized, and it becomes somewhat predictable when you get to know the different parts and what's connected to what, and how does it get the body to do what it gets the body to do. So it's an amazing organ, just like the other organs. It's got cells that you can understand. It's got circuitry that you can think about that makes sense. It's really, but yes, bringing out that physical organ, it definitely gets people's attention.
Yeah, and I've seen you talk to another interviewer who had a model of the brain, and he said, okay, well, where does love live? I love
Yeah,
that because it was just cute, but you knew exactly where love lives, which is
yeah.
really kind of amazing.
That was Scavlin. He's a great interviewer. He's well known. He's a wonderful man. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it was so cute. I mean, I'd never had anybody ask me that. It's like, where's love? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
So just
yeah.
to kind of leverage that a little bit, if you know where love lives in the brain, could you improve your capacity to love? Just kind of having that extra information, do you think?
I think that the better we understand what's going on inside of our head, the more power we have to pick and choose. Yes, I want to be more like this. I'm wired for it. Any capacity that we have because we have cells that are performing that function. So if I'm feeling fear, it's because I've stimulated a fear circuit. If I'm experiencing love, then I'm running a love circuit. If I'm fine tuning a movement, I'm running that circuitry in my mind that's paying attention to my ability to finally tune a movement. So the better we get to know what the brain does, then we can call and pick and choose who and how we want to be in the world, emotionally, as well as cognitively, as well as physiologically, and then physically in our body. We have so much more power over what's going on inside of ourselves than we were ever taught.
Right, and so much hope that thinking offers. I'm not I understand there's times that we might need anti-anxiety medication. There's times severe trauma, tough experiences where that might be necessary. But I think often we miss the other side of the equation, that these are pathways. You can have a anxiety pattern in the brain that just is consistently running, and you give people the power to choose.
That's
And
right.
that's so, I love that description of the brain, because the brain is so powerful, and most
Yeah.
people don't understand that they can actually help. They can actually start to do techniques to activate their frontal lobe better, that gives them more
Yeah.
executive control more, so that they
Yeah.
aren't brain hacked by themselves.
Yes. I think that part of it is circuitry is delicious. Whatever the circuitry is that you're running, it's delicious, and it is full envelopment of what we are, whether it's my joy and I'm just happy and I just am giggling to belly laughing. It's delicious.
Right.
Or when we look into our fear, fear is this overwhelming, all encompassing big picture. Oh my gosh. And in its own way, it too is pure and delicious in its purity, even though it's just energy.
Right.
Our anxiety, it's all overwhelming. Our grief, it's all overwhelming. So each of the emotions, there's circuitry. And there are specific cells that are running a loop and a patterned loop with very specific chemistry. And we do have the power to choose moment by moment who and how we want to be in the world. But from the moment a strong emotion is going to be triggered, from the whatever you're thinking that has triggered that emotion, and then there's a physiological response to what you're thinking and what you're feeling, from the beginning of that emotion to the end till it's completely through your body and out of your body takes less than 90 seconds.
Yep.
And so I call that the 90-second rule, because it is from the moment you think a thought that's going to make you happy, sad, glad, grief, whatever, anxious, and then a physiological response happens biologically, it floods through you and flushes out of you. That loop is less than 90 seconds. Now, we can certainly stay fearful or stay in anxiety for longer than 90 seconds, but it's because we're re-stimulating that loop and rerunning it. So that gains its pattern. And so, like you said, it kind of becomes a habit, because it's a habitual link that then you can hook into, trigger it, run it. How long am I going to stay in it? And what are my choices? Well, I know that I have other choices. So what tools can I then use in order to get out of one loop into a different loop? And the first thing I have to know is what else is on the buffet for me to choose from?
Right. So let's say we have somebody, and just so you know a little bit more about me, people predominantly come to see me for some kind of pain. They're looking to perform better, they're looking to feel better. But what I often see, and what my specialty is how's their brain working, and what might their brain be doing to either contribute to their pain or keep them stuck in that pain. And so we find some really interesting things, and inevitably, for probably 25% of my clients, we really discover this very clear truth that it's not the knee that's the problem, or it's not the shoulder that's the problem. There's really more of a brain activation involved. The brain's revolving around this deliciousness of stress, chronic stress, and they're stuck in there.
Yeah,
So how can you educate that brain that is
right,
so stuck it doesn't even know there's a buffet?
right. Is that a question? I think you're the man with all those
I
answers.
don't know. So what can you, so if you had a friend and they just were so stuck in that
Yeah,
pattern of I'm lost, I'm hopeless, there's
right,
nothing I can do.
right.
How would you begin to talk to them about the buffet that's available to them?
Well, I go straight to the brain and I say, when you look at this brain, and usually I have a brain with me, but I don't, I'm sorry. But I look at the brain, I say, this brain is made up of cells.
Mhm.
These are just cells. And our health and well being and our frame of reference and our frame of mind is all about which group of cells are we running? And we have two emotional brains and we have two cognitive thinking brains, one in each of those two hemispheres. And each one of those has very different characteristics and skill sets. And if I'm hooked into my woe is me, then I'm in my left emotional brain and I'm down, I'm comparing to the past. I'm looking at this picture. I'm constricting. I'm getting smaller. I'm hooked into my habitual pain of all of that. And we can live there a lifetime. I mean, and it's very unpleasant, and it's very unpleasant for everybody else. And it's our stress circuitry. Stress in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's actually a good motivator. But distress becomes something that shuts down and constricts the system so that there's no ability to expand or open. So I always encourage people, come to the present moment. Yeah. If you're wallowing in your misery, let's talk about your misery and let you express some of that. But that's all about something that isn't right here, right now. This might be a perception, but it's related to this big pile of GOM that is holding you down. But if you're willing to bring your mind to the right here, right now, and look out of a window and look at the colors of the trees and look at just let the movement happen and be present. Right here, right now is the perfect moment. Right here, right now is a perfect moment. And wherever you are, you're not right here, right now. So the first thing you have to do is get back into the present moment. And there are lots of tools that you can use in order to get yourself there.
Right. I love your phrase.
Your decision.
Yeah. Your tripart phrase that I love, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. Such an easy mechanism to do what you just explained. Look outside, notice the beauty around you. That's a great way, I think, just to begin to create a new pathway of thinking.
Exactly. And that's your choice. You say, well, what are my choices? What is my choice? My choice is to not be that. Mm-hmm. First, I have to be willing to not be my miserable self. I have to be willing. Am I willing, or do I just want to be that? Yeah. And if I just want to be that, then go run that. Go find people who will let you run that. Go share that with everybody, because that's not happy keeping it to itself. It needs to share. Its misery loves miserable company. Right. When you're ready to bring yourself to the present moment and say, it really is a beautiful day, even if it's raining out. Isn't it a beautiful day? And look at those gorgeous clouds. They're really lovely. And look at the different colors and look at the movement patterns. And oh my God, I'm actually capable of having eyeballs that allow me to see. And I have ears that allow me to hear. And I have taste buds that allow me to taste. And I have legs and arms that allow me to move into the space around me. Wow, actually, I'm a pretty amazing thing. I'm a thing. So get out of your little ego. Get out of your little self. It's not all about yourself. There's a tiny little group of cells about the size of a peanut inside of your brain that says, I am Jill Bolte Taylor. I am Jill Bolte Taylor. You wipe out those little cells and I don't know who I am, and I don't care who I am. All I know is I'm a living being. I lose that boundary and that constriction of what am I, all the positive or all the negative. I open, I become more expansive. I got another little tiny group of cells right here in the left parietal that says these are the boundaries of where I begin and where I end. So I see myself as this little vulnerable creature. And it's like, no, you wipe out those and you're an energetic being. You're as big as the universe with all possibility. I mean, there's all different kinds of ways of looking at who are you, what are you, and how attached are you to being miserable.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you can speak to with such authority on that, not only because of your medical training, your neural anatomy specialization, but also your personal experience, because your left brain got wiped out.
Oh, it was delightful.
Yeah, right. I love that because it was delightful.
It was delightful. People think, oh my God, how horrible, poor little Jill. And it's like, oh, you have no idea. I just wiped out all my history of pain and you're thinking I'm in trouble? It's like, oh my, I'm free.
Wow.
I'm free. And we have that ability, and that freedom comes when we are willing to bring ourselves to the present moment. And that's why performance, we talk about flow. What's flow? Flow is the present moment. Flow is I'm an energy being amidst an energy field, and I got me in this ball and this stick, and I want to send it 300 yards away. Well, it's not 300 yards away if you're in the big picture. It's connected. It's all a part of this bigger picture. And so you approach that whole situation completely differently, because now you're in the possibility. You're not in the this and the that and the detail.
Yeah. So this is a great moment, I think, to pivot on the present circumstances, because we can look at the occurrences of this year. It's been a challenging year in so many ways with COVID-19 and now with George Floyd. Very real, hard things to live with, to deal with, very discouraging potentially.
Yeah.
And some people are stuck in the negative thinking around these things.
Yeah.
What are some thoughts you have to help us get through today?
So I think it's really important that we recognize that emotion. So at any moment in time, there are only three things going on inside of our brain. We're thinking thoughts, we're feeling emotions, and we're running a physiological response to what we're thinking and what we're feeling. Those are the only things going on. But as a biological creature, I can watch that video and feel empathy for that man. I can feel venomous towards that police officer. I can, because I got that rage. We're wired. We're all wired for all of it. And I can hook into that, and I can rah, 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 just as well as anybody else. And then I can go to one of these groups, go be a part of a group, and I can protest with my thinking mind, and I can make my points, and I can write to my leaders, and I can say, we want change, try A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or I can, from my cognition, or I can go in and I can hook into my rage, I can hook into my unfairness, I can work into my hate, I can hook into my whatever that is, which is delicious. And then you see me, and it's like, oh, mirror neuron, I'm gonna rage with Jill, and then we become a we pack, and now we're the we, and now we're against the police because the police are bad and wrong. And it's like, no, let's rationalize. Let's come back. Let's be passionate. Let's have our emotions, but let's not get totally caught in the emotions, because we are feeling creatures who think. So we have to feel that in order to get into thinking that's going to allow us to create a strategy that is going to work. And our power as people is our vote. And anybody who says to me they don't vote, I look at them and I say, honey, you need to own your power. Why on earth wouldn't you own your power? What is in the way between you and owning your power? And sometimes that's a vote against someone, and sometimes that's a vote towards someone. But you got to look at the big picture and say, under these circumstances, I would rather follow this trajectory than that trajectory, and take a little responsibility for who you are and what you're being in the world. You're a voice. Yeah. Use your voice. Use your power.
Yeah.
And being rageful isn't your power. In fact, rage, when we move into that circuitry, that's when we've lost our power. That's when we've given it up to the rage, and it has hijacked the higher cognitive rational mind.
Yeah, I think that's wow, such a powerful statement, because it's like being in a fight, right? Because at some point in that combat situation, if you're a soldier, you lose your rationality, right? You're just kind of a beast that wants to survive, and
that's right.
We can go into that zone and be that, and it's important to become that if our life is at stake. But we have to be more rational and say our life isn't at stake. It's better to stick around and be the change. I've been real impressed with my daughter, Grace Anna. She's 24, and we live in downtown Denver, so we've been pretty impressed at the peaceful nature of the demonstrations around here, and lots of people have gone downtown and been present at the Capitol just a half a mile away from us, and my daughter's been down there a number of times. But I've had some very encouraging conversations with her, and I never saw her as being one to be interested in politics or running for office, but this has ignited her. She's
Good.
got a force to her now, a
Good.
presence that's like I could see myself maybe going this direction because her passion has awakened something.
How old is she?
24.
24. Perfect.
Yeah.
So she's a tail millennial.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, the millennials have not been willing to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I am so hoping that they have had enough of looking around at what they don't want, that even if they're looking at something that they don't still want, it's better than the alternative. And if they're not willing, then you really have to ask yourself, what's the point? And I don't think you're allowed to complain if you're not going to vote.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
I just believe if you're not going to participate, don't distract and participate and bring others down. Let them use their power, because this is all about owning your power.
Right.
We are this magnificent creature, 50 trillion beautiful cells, every one of them with that glorious DNA as that tiny little zygote, that original sperm egg combination. Every cell has that DNA except for 100,000 red blood cells. But everybody else has that code. We are amazing beings. And part of it is use your voice, use your power. Otherwise, what are you doing here? So I'm a huge advocate for care about what's going on, and truly create the world you want. And, all of us as teenagers, we get the disillusion because this is the world I want. This is the world we're inheriting. And the world we're inheriting is never what we want the world to have been. So what do? Do we engage and use our voice and use our power? Or do we work against the system, or do we just fall out of the system? It's kind of like the sympathetic nervous system. Do you fight? Do you flight? Do you flee? What are you doing? Do you play dead? I mean, it's the same thing at a political level.
Right. And related to this, so many of my guests actually on Game Changers, and one doctor I've been talking to more recently, Dr. Kanaganti, has become a good friend, and she'll be my next Game Changer. But there's a really beautiful dialogue, I think, happening around our peaceful protesters of the past, such as Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., but their language and their ability to speak to historical important events is so remarkable. And I've ordered a couple Martin Luther King books because there's such a eloquence to his speech, and kindness and love. And I think his work, Strength to Love, is so powerful. Even that concept, strength to love.
Yes.
With you, there's a quote that you have: "Please take responsibility for the energy you bring into this space." And again, love that. Can you speak a little bit to that and what you mean by it?
Sure. So, this left hemisphere is fantastic at going detail. It gives us language. We can be specific. It has those group of cells that gives us the boundaries of where we begin and where we end. It does a group of cells that defines me, who I am as me. I become an individual, and all these details about me and my world and blah, blah, blah. But it all centers around me. And then that right hemisphere is in the absence of that left brain, which is what happened to me with that hemorrhage. When that group of cells, that little peanut grew shut down that said, I am Jill Bolte Taylor, then she didn't exist anymore. And so in the absence of knowing her and her details, I felt, in the absence of those cells that defined me as this body and just this body, I felt like an energy being that was as big as the universe. And then this is a dense network of cellular structure upon which I live my life. And I get to use the energy infused through this form into the world. So I become this energy being. And so take responsibility for the energy that you bring into a world, into this space, is asking you to take responsibility for the bigger picture of you that your left brain may not be privy to, but your right brain knows you to be. So as you show up, if you show up with hostility and anger, people can feel that. You can feel when people come in and you know, if you just, you can feel when people are being dishonest. How is that? It's because you're looking at the bigger picture of their face and their voice and their body language versus the context of what their left brain is having come out of their mouth. So taking responsibility for the energy that you bring is really looking at yourself as a whole being and allowing yourself to take responsibility for how do I take this mass I define as myself into the world and influence the world. What is the influence I'm making on the world?
Yeah. So important to the conversation right now in our culture, on our planet, because every day I think we have the potential to engage in a conversation that involves some degree of hostility, whether or not we were facing the difficulties we're presently facing in our jobs and our careers. We always have the opportunity to face someone who is in a hostile energy place.
Right.
So for those of us who might have a employment situation where you know there's a superior or maybe a colleague who brings that negative energy into our space, whether that's in our workplace or perhaps a friend who we're sort of reluctant to talk to that friend because of the energy that hovers around them.
Right.
How can we be the change?
That big cloud that follows them.
Yeah. How can we interact with that friend? Excuse me, a little bit of congestion today, but how can we be the power of positivity to that friend or that colleague? What might be a tool to help us get into that relationship with a little bit less fear and a little bit more force for good?
Yeah. So I believe our number one job is to love one another.
Love it.
Period. Our number one job is to love one another. And if you're in that zone of unhappy, disgruntled, spew your venom into the world, I can look at you. I have mirror neurons that want to reflect that and move into defense or offense and engage with you.
Right.
I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
That is circuitry. I don't have to run that circuit. And if I know beforehand that I'm going to encounter negativity, it is my job to just love those people. Yeah. It's just my job. So even people who are going to vote for it differently than me, I could hook into all kinds of judgment, negativity, and venomous, I'm right, you're wrong. And it's like, I don't want to be that girl. So who do you want to be in the world? I want to be me. I want to be calm. I want to be rational. I want to feel passionate, but I want to take responsibility for the energy that I bring. So if somebody's down, I do have empathic cells in my right hemisphere that allow me to, one, recognize that you're in pain. You're in pain and you're spiraling and spinning in your own pain, and you may be spewing your pain out, but the bottom line is, you're in pain. Yeah. And it's my job to just love you in spite of yourself. Yeah. Now, that does not mean I am obligated to go and spend an hour with you.
Right.
It does not mean that I am obligated to becoming whatever it is you are. It is my responsibility to hold myself, to be who I want to be, to go and maybe say hello, say, I hope you have a better day. I'm here, I care, and move on. It is my job to love the world. Not agree with the world, love the world. And am I going to agree with the world? No. Is it easier to love the world? It's a whole lot easier. Nobody came in with a manual on how to get it all right. And we're this collection of cells. And the cells are not developed by the time we're born. They're there, but they are not developed. They're ready to make connection, and they make connections based on our experiences. And if we endure all kinds of hostility and ugly and alcoholism and what might come with that, or drug addiction and what might come with that, or an environment of hate and what comes with that, and we get wired to respond or be a part of that as innocent children, then we grow up to be those people.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is look at that and say, that's circuitry. And that is pain. And I don't have to entertain it. I don't have to support it. I don't have to agree with it. But that person was an innocent little one day. Yeah. When it was born. And this is what our society did to it. So my anger doesn't go to that person. My anger goes to the society that had that happen. And if now I'm looking more expansively, instead of having my anger and hostility toward one person who's miserable, then I have a voice to use. And that goes back to the other conversation that we had. We have a voice to use, and we have a rational mind. Line things up, figure out how do we make the system better, participate, be a part of the solution.
And I love your work educating very young people, children and teenagers, with this information. Can you talk to them about your passion for that age group and why you are thrilled about working with them?
Oh, the human brain, from the moment we're born, as I said, the cells are there, but it's not connected. And then the first 10 years or so, everything I learn is pretty much about me. How do I get my control over my flailing limbs? How do I create order out of the disorder of information coming in? How do I get this thing to work? How do I get it to crawl and syncopated with itself? How do I stand? How do I get balanced to work? It's all about creating order in those cells of what I am, really up till I'm about 10. And then I've got 2 years before puberty is going to happen. And these are the times when everything in the brain, 2 years before puberty hits, all the dendrites start multiplying, and there's all these possibilities. And so if you know these little people, it's like they are smart as a whip and distractible as all heck, because everything is a new shiny and new possibilities. And then when full puberty comes on and the growth spurt comes on, there's this pruning back of those dendrites. Literally 50% of the dendrites are going to prune back. I mean, they're literally losing half their minds. Right?
That's a great way to put it.
So maybe I used to, I used to like this little girl, and I played with her all the time. And now I'm not so interested in her. But you, little boy, you're looking pretty cute right now, So everything is changing, and we're trying to figure out, who are we? And so we have this pruning back, and we're actually growing testosterone receptors on our amygdala. Wow. So especially the little boys. So the amygdala is asking the question, am I safe? Am I safe? And now you put in some testosterone and it becomes aggressive. And these poor kids, oh my gosh, they've lost half their mind. Their hormones are flying through them. Everything is just, the teenage brain is a phenomenon, and it is not fully grown until the prefrontal lobe attaches, and that's about the age of 25, 26, 27. Wow. So how can you not look at these little beloved children of ours with sympathy? It is my number one job to love them.
That's amazing. And I love how you can say that basic exact thing to a group of teens. I watched you speak to a group of teenagers, and they embraced it. They loved it because you were speaking so well, not only to their hearts, but you were speaking directly to their brains, to that brain going, what's going on in me?
Exactly. They want to know, because they know what it feels like to be them. And they used to be a little happy, 6 or 7 or 8 years old. And now they're just like high and low and sad and mad and glad and oh my God, and big drama, throwing some estrogen, throwing some testosterone, and you go woo, wee, woo. And all we can do is love these kids and try to protect them.
So do you have is part of your organization geared exclusively toward teens right now?
No, but a big part of my heart is I'm about education of the brain to the general public, and I am very sympathetic to the teenage brain, and so I talk a lot about the teenage brain, and you're absolutely right that teenagers want to know, why do I feel the way I feel, and is it okay, is it normal, and how long is it going to last? They want information. And so So, I just want to give them information. I want to give them as much as I can and just kind of help them, love them through it, and be sympathetic to their parents, and, and encourage their parents to just love them through it. I know you want to wring his neck because he did A, B, or C, but you just got to love him through it. And you got to keep bringing them home and saying, this is home. This is home base. And I'm here. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here for you to talk to, or if you need something. And that's one reason why it's so good for kids to have structure, because they're like this all over creation. And if you're going to lose 50% of your cells and 50% of your connections, then you're going to lose 50% of what's going on in there. What 50% do you keep? You keep the 50% you lose. You use. So you're going to talk. You're going to keep that. You're going to walk. And if you're doing sports, you're going to stay tuned in well to this masterpiece of your body. You're going to keep that. You're going to keep your sports or your music or whatever it is that you love. Do what you love during your teenage years, because that's what you're going to have as good skill sets for when you're an adult.
What do you think about the concept of using your body to improve your brain function?
It's one big thing.
Okay.
This separation of the body, 70% of the fibers are going up, not going down. So this is one big entity. And when you allow it to flow up and flow down, and you open it up to all possibility, then you're like one big amoeba. Because realistically, with the consciousness of your mind not being tuned into those little tiny cells of your toe, even though your nervous system is going down there and your cardiovascular system is feeding those cells, those little toes, as we get older, we kind of forget about the toes. Well, we don't have to. We have to constantly work on that holographic image inside of our brain about where is my body. And that's how I rebuilt my perception of my body when I had that hemisphere, that stroke in the left hemisphere that wiped out those cells, and I became as big as the universe. I had no perception of the boundaries of where I began and where I ended. So I had to rebuild that holographic image of my body. And I think it's so important as we age to, first thing in the morning when I wake up, I wiggle my toes very slowly, and I move them in different orientations, and I gently move my ankle in different positions to remind my brain that, oh, those are mine, those are me, those I have to work with. I'm this whole thing. And I do the same thing with my fingers, and I do the same thing with my neck, and I do the same thing with my spine. I remind my brain, what am I that I get to use all day long?
Yeah. So cool. I know that Anat Beniel played a role in your recovery and in the 9 Essentials. I'd love for you to speak a little bit about that. And I love it not only because it helped you, but this information is so important to all of us going into that basic movement to experience you, to rediscover you. I definitely know so many clients who part of their discouragement, I have no doubt, is related to their disconnection from their brain to their hand. They don't have good sensation in their hand, so it's causing this threat and an orientation of the brain to be predisposed to fear, anxiety, chaos. So can you speak to the 9 Essentials or any part of that?
Sure. So, and I want to add just to what you said is that when we experience any kind of trauma, one thing that the brain does in order to protect us is to make it a big block. So if you look at a shoulder injury, your shoulder probably has at least 50, if not 100, tiny little movements that it can do because of all the muscles that are related to it. And when we have trauma, it becomes a one big thing. And so then you move it as one big block. And so essentially what has happened at the level of the brain, the problem's in the brain. Once you get the problem fixed in the body, the problem's no longer in the body. The problem is in the brain. So, and the communication and the image, that holographic image of inside of your brain of what that shoulder is. So I met Anat Ben-Yil post-stroke. I had already completely recovered. What I liked about Anat's work, though, when I met her, was that her 9 essentials are spot on principles for what I did in order to recover my brain and my experience.
Awesome.
So on the afternoon of my stroke, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or have any recollection of my life. I describe myself as an infant in a woman's body, and the right side of my body was completely weakened. And on the morning of the stroke, my right arm had gone paralyzed. So I was a mess, by anybody's evaluation. But what I did was I worked with what I had, and I was now this amorphic, as big as the universe, energetic field. And at the same time, I had this body, and it was my perception that I believed I would never be able to squeeze the enormousness of myself back inside this tiny little body in order to get it to function again at a detailed level.
Wow.
So we are this magnificent collection of cells. And in order to get that to work, the brain has everything to do with all the cells of the body. So I see myself as a cellular entity. That's what I am. I'm some 50 trillion magnificent, beautiful cells, and they're all important. The cells in my liver are important to filter. The cells in my heart are important to pump. The cells in my brain are important for making integration, so I can bring in billions of bits, if not trillions of bits of data moment by moment in order to create a perception of reality of what is right here, right now before me. So I have this magnificent collection of cells, and I didn't die that day. I did not die that day. And because I did not die, I had a sense of gratitude that I did not die. I was like 99.99% away from my body, outside of being able to have any control of this form, having any perception of life out there, zero, because my left brain is the tool I use to understand language and my relationship with the external world. Jill Bolte Taylor was gone. The boundaries of my body were gone. I was as big as the universe, and I experienced an incredible experience of peaceful, blissful euphoria. Why on earth would I ever choose to come back into this body? Because this body is a grinding machine of all these little cells, eating, working, creating waste, cleaning out the waste. It's a world, and it's heavy, and it's busy. And it's like, wow, wow, this is, wow, perspective. And it's like, okay, I'm not dead, and I have this incredible bliss, but I'm not dead. And if I'm not dead and I have this experience of bliss, then that means everyone who is alive has the capacity to have this experience of bliss. And wouldn't we be a different people if we all knew that we were connected as one human family,
right,
as this miracle of life? Wouldn't we live our lives differently, and wouldn't we treat one another differently, and wouldn't we live in a different world? And that's why I came back, to be that voice and to bring that energy to the bigger picture conversation.
Wow, such a powerful, powerful voice that is. What an awesome insight. So is it true to say that many of us have too much left brain activation, and we really need to work on some right hemisphere truths?
We live in a society that is skewed to the value structure of the left.
Very interesting.
And the value structure of the left is I am, me, mine, I want. And the more I have and the more I get, and I compare myself to you, and I want more than you have, because then that makes me and my little brain feel like I'm superior to you, or I have more than you, and my house is bigger than yours, and I'm climbing the ladder, and I want more money, and there's never enough money, and I'm going to lie and scheme in order to get more money, and I'm just going to push myself, and I'm going to work an 80-hour week because I got to get more and more and more, and I'm going to sacrifice my soul, and I'm going to sacrifice the relationship with my spouse and my children, and I'm going to sacrifice all those right brain, soft and feely things That's where meaning
Yeah.
is actually in the right hemisphere, in the connection. Because I can guarantee you, when you're on your deathbed, all of that left brain is going to disappear like that, and all you're going to have is your right brain as you expand and leave your body. All the details of this world stay in this world, and your relationships and your connections and your love and how you lived as a right brain value structure is all that you're going to become. And so if you want to live a life of purpose, if you want to live a life of meaning, now you got me preaching. If you want all that, you've got to allow yourself to open, because that's the magnificent of what you are. It's what we are.
I love the quote that life is what happens when we're busy doing something else.
Exactly.
We're so busy thinking that we're living. Before I moved to Denver, we lived in one of the most affluent cities in the country. Not because we had great wealth, we just happened to be there. But my doctor told me on several occasions that in spite of that massive affluence of that area, we had some of the highest uh, prescription use of anti-anxiety drugs. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget that contrast. And I have no doubt that it's because we get so stuck in this left brain processing.
Yeah.
So I wonder how, without having a stroke, how can we get more into the right brain? Are there a
Yeah.
couple tools that you would recommend, either meditation or how can we get more into just do we need to sit down and make it happen? How do we get more into the right brain?
You know, the first thing is, when you think about that community and that high level of anxiety, anxiety and stress just walk hand in hand with one another in what they're doing to the autonomic nervous system. And the level of unhappiness comes often with the highest levels of wealth. Because if I can have everything, and my meaning is having more and more and more, and I can have everything, then there's really no meaning there.
Right.
Why am I here? I'm just here to accumulate more. And the stress circuitry also is in that left hemisphere. So the more we get, the more we need to get. We need to get more because we need to get more. We can there's always more to get. There's that hamster wheel. And so there's never the pause and the peace. And we know that no matter what you're doing, you have the push and you have to have the pause. I mean, otherwise, think about swimming. If you take a powerful stroke and you don't glide, you're stroking, and boom, that's all you've got. But your power is in the stroke and the glide, and the stroke and the glide, and the stroke and the glide. Life is a push and a pause. And the pause is coming back to that reset moment, coming back. And that's one we just kind of scattered around from Anat Ben-Yael. What I love about that work is her power is in the pause. And I encourage everybody and anybody who has any issues, body issues, to go to AnatBenYaelMethod.com and get that free ebook about the 9 essentials, download it, and create a relationship with healing your own body, having a relationship with your own body. And part of it is, even if you're strong and healthy, for higher vitality. What's vitality? It's the body on fire. It's health and well-being. So ways of getting yourself into it's all about getting into the present moment. One, you have to be willing. If you're not willing, you're not going anywhere. You're going to hook into those loops, and you're just going to run those loops of stress and more of the hamster routine. You have to want it. You have to be willing to pause. Even if it's just in this moment, I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to hear, what sounds can I hear in the present moment? Well, I'm hearing my blind just with the wind, the trees with the wind. I've got a tarp flapping in the wind. what is there. It allows me to expand myself and open, breathe, focus on the breath. The breath happens in the present moment. Sure, I can use other tools that I can practice. I can practice meditation. I can practice prayer. I can practice repeating mantra. I can practice doing a sport that I love where I'm not competing. I'm just in my body doing it. I can practice by jumping into the water. Boy, that's right here, right now. I can get into the shower and pay attention to the feeling of the droplets on my body. I can take a walk in nature and not analyze anything, just be present and let myself expand. It's the fine art of expanding, allowing ourselves to expand. And what we know is that whatever those details in that left brain are trying, problems that we're trying to figure out, or mathematical equations that we're trying to find a proof for, whatever's going on in the left brain, if you take the pause and you allow yourself to breathe in the present moment, when you go back, your left brain has taken a pause and your right brain might actually have the big picture answer for you that you've been looking for.
That's so beautiful. So, so beautiful. Dr. Taylor, I know you have a day full of interviews, so I know that our time is up with you today. I would love to talk to you for the next 3 hours, but if you're ever in Denver, please reach out. I'd love to take you to dinner and get to know you better. I really just love your work, and everything you've said resonates 100% with what I try to accomplish at MP3, Move Past Pain to Performance. For all of our guests, I know you have been such a wonderful, wonderful guest to our audience. Dr. Jill, Bolte, Taylor, everyone, thank you so much for your words, for your energy. I feel lighter. I know I'm going to have a better day because of your light. Thank you,
Perfect.
Dr. Taylor, again and again. I hope you have a super wonderful, awesome day where you remain open to the powers that are in you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a delight, and we'll do it again
I
sometime.
love that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.